What is going on, everyone? Welcome to the Promethean Tides. I'm General, and as always, I'm joined by Breaker. What is going on, Breaker?
Oh, snap. I sure do hate gingival plaque.
Yes, indeed. Welcome to the show, everyone. If you like what we're doing here, leave a like and a subscribe and a bell and a comment and all the things. Share us on Facebook to your nana. I'm sure that she will appreciate this. Absolutely. Yes.
And every time you ring the bell, an angel gets its wing.
Isn't isn't that nice and pleasant? Um. We're gonna be doing a little bit of the old poll review. Just a little bit though. Gonna keep that segment short. And then we're gonna get into some moral philosophy stuff, which I think will be interesting for those who give any poops about moral philosophy, which some people may not, and I don't blame you. I don't even totally believe that it exists at all. But that's a difference that Breaker and I have, so that's okay. But we will start out with just some poll review. Now this is the segment where some memes have been collected from poll, and they're they tend to be a little bit spicy. They are not necessarily reflective of the political views of those on this show. They're a funny thing from 4chan, and sometimes things that are offensive can still be funny, and I understand that the YouTubes and I guess the maybe the American government in general would prefer that offensive things didn't exist, and that maybe we just didn't have this pesky thing called the First Amendment. I still kind of believe that we should have the First Amendment, and that offensive things can be funny. Like sometimes they're just worth laughing at. Yeah, we're gonna do that. Let's hop into the very first one.
Yay.
These are the guys from It's Always Sunny, and people. How do you stay so calm and level-headed while everyone else is freaking out over the economy? Me. These people have no idea how to live without money. They're what's called new poor. We're old poor. Nice.
You know what? I actually, on a deep personal level, I resonate with this a lot because, for half of my life, I lived without running water and shit in an outhouse. So, I'm practically jungle level poor.
Wow. So, really, when all the financial institutions collapse, you'll be fine. You'll be good. You know how to rough it.
Yeah, I'll get my bean farm, and I'll grow some lettuce, and I'll grow some beets, turnips, and carrots.
That actually.
And then when the deers and coyotes come, it's like I'll trap them and snap them up and cook them.
Okay, all right. Well, looks like you got a plan. I've lived in a city my entire life, so I think I'm just dead. So it was nice knowing you.
Well, the zombie horde will get you long before starvation sets in, so you have that to look forward to.
Oh, well, at least one is a little bit quicker. So there's that. Okay, next meme. Reporter, is it safe to say that? And talking to Matt Gates, the reporter goes, "Is it safe to say that based off of your comments, you're suggesting that these women at these abortion rallies are ugly and overweight?" Gates replies, "Yes." What a legend.
That would explain a lot, and it would also, it's like, it's times like these that make me really think about pro-life and pro-choice stances at the end of the day. Because if these are the type of people actually going to the abortion clinics, Kind of makes you wonder how many of them you'd want around.
Yeah, actually, let me see if I can pull this up real quick. I wanna listen to it. Yeah, let's see. So, here it is. I'll play it for you fine people in the audience.
Is it safe to say that based off of your comments, you're suggesting that these women at these abortion rallies are ugly and overweight?
Yes.
What do you say to people who think that those comments are offensive?
Be offended.
Mm-hmm. Is it safe to say that based off of your comments, you're suggesting that these women at these abortion rallies are ugly and overweight?
Yes.
What do you say to people who think that those comments are offensive?
Be offended.
I love how he just says, yes. Like, yes, that's what I'm saying.
I'm not sugarcoating, I'm not obfuscating, it's just yes. Fat ugly bitch, be offended.
Man, I'll tell you what, I have really started to enjoy Matt Gaetz. I'm a Matt Gaetz enjoyer at this point.
Snap indeed.
Here we have another meme. Hey kid, want to hear a story? Not today, Satan. Aw, look, it's running away from the demonic clown.
Not today, Slanesh.
Yeah, that is actually a little bit more specific. Remember when Miss Frizzle took the kids to go get nutted on by salmon?
Yeah, actually, I do. That was the thing that really happened.
It's not. I mean, it's the thing that happened, I guess.
Yeah, that's how salmons like do the bow chicka wow wow. So that's like, yeah, they're literally getting bukkake by a fish.
Totally appropriate field trip for children. Nothing wrong.
Well,
with that.
it is educational and it is scientific, so
Yeah. Hey, you know what? As long as it's educational, then it's appropriate for children, and that's why I support Drag Queen Story Hour. As long as
at least the fish isn't dressed up like a demonic clown, but then it's like, oh, damn it.
Yeah, but it is nutting on you, so it's like there's trade-offs with everything, as Thomas Sowell said.
Yeah. Can't win them all, I suppose. Sometimes you get read a story to by a demonic clown, and sometimes you get nutted on by salmon.
At least one of the two is going to happen in your life, so,
But here's a bear that's going to teach that salmon a lesson by eating it, I suppose.
So here we have an attractive woman, and she's hugging a bear, and this says, they look so cute and cuddly, but the slightest thing can turn this beautiful creature into something so dangerous and violent that the toughest of men could be killed or maimed for life. Here you can see it cuddling a bear.
I don't get it.
But it's describing the creature, and then you can see that creature is cuddling the bear.
I have a feeling that this is somehow one of my anti-misogyny progressive subroutines is overriding this.
Does not compute.
How dare you be misogynistic? You're not allowed to do this.
Well, this one is definitely going to mess with your subroutines. So we have the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. You've got war, famine, pestilence, death. And then we got a 5th guy. And Death goes, and you are? And he just says, women's rights. Oh, no, anything with that. Yeah. Well, that's, why can't we have a 5th horseman of the apocalypse? I don't see anything wrong with having a 4th dude. I think that's fine. We need to be more inclusive of various horsemen. Here we have life on Mars, and the guy goes, whoa, is that actual bacteria? Amazing, we found life on Mars. And then life on Earth. That's not a life. A person exists at birth. If it's inside of a mother, it's not an actual life yet.
I find nothing wrong with this.
Yeah, this is legit logic. I support this logic. This just makes sense. One
of the deep lore I'll tell you about that soy jack on the right For those in the know, there's probably a lot of people on the internet that know this, but the soy jack on the right is actually modeled after a famous photograph of video game Let's Player Jacksepticeye, believe it or not.
Wait, is it really?
Yes.
I mean, I guess I can kind of see it, but it's not. It's not really. It's not that similar looking.
Well, he was making a funny face for like one of those face morphing AI things when they first came out, and all the YouTubers were playing around with them.
Interesting. Okay, well
And he had like a giant unibrow, and he was just like grinning into the camera. But before his face was morphed, this is like modeled after his actual face, because it was like a very unflattering angle. He was being goofy on purpose.
Huh. Okay, well that's a very obscure little piece of internet lore, but now we know. Thank you.
And the other soy jack with the glasses that's usually holding up his
That's
iPhone
Markiplier.
and stuff. Yeah, that's Markiplier.
Oh boy.
Strangely fitting.
Is Markiplier red Jacksepticeye or is Jacksepticeye green Markiplier? Which is the
Huh. I think they're wildly different in their approach and their general content, actually.
Okay. Let me ask you this question then. Is Jacksepticeye green PewDiePie or is PewDiePie fascist Jacksepticeye? Which direction does that go?
I should even have to say it, but it's going to be PewDiePie, the fascist Septiceye.
Well, isn't the lore that actually Jacksepticeye became famous because PewDiePie had him on one of his videos? So actually, Jacksepticeye is the derivative of PewDiePie, so he's just green PewDiePie.
Yeah, something like that, I suppose.
Okay, all right, we figured out the equations. All right.
Markiplier, I think, was pretty much self-made.
Yeah, I think so. Okay. An Irishman leaves a car in Romania. Can the Romanians strip it apart before it blows up?
Stop the word to you, ladies! Jacksepticeye here to answer this question.
It's an interesting little riddle. I'm not sure if we will ever truly know the answer, but both of these peoples have very interesting relationships with cars. We know that.
Definitely. Oh God.
Okay.
Oh
so,
God.
1 point to Slytherin for each Jew killed during the Holocaust. Draco and the kids start cheering. Gandalf looks at the screen. 0 points.
I got him.
Clearly, this is a mildly offensive meme, and
no, it's triggering me a lot. That is definitely not fucking Gandalf.
Yeah, that's not Gandalf. Come on, that's Dumbledore. That's not Gandalf. Like, what the hell is this? This is probably
Obviously.
one of the more offensive memes that we've shown on here. Like, it just God, man, if I was a big Harry Potter fan or a big Lord of the Rings fan, I would be so triggered.
Uh-oh.
So this is a tweet from ADL. Former President Trump also delivered remarks that were in character but still dangerous. His claims about expelling warmongers, driving out globalists, casting out communists, and throwing off those who hate our country echo classic anti-Semitic rhetoric.
Hmm.
Okay, ADL.
Interesting perception, I suppose.
Yeah. So I guess that if you, I think that what they're saying is that, if you don't like the warmongers, the globalists, the communists, or those who hate your country, you're being anti-Semitic. Now that's kind of a That's a very interesting take from ADL. I wouldn't have expected that exactly from ADL, but I would call that a little bit of a self-own, maybe. Now, this link actually has like a little this image has a little archive link, and I was like, wait a minute, is this? Oh, this is real.
Yes, it is real.
And
Just like Israel.
yeah, no, it's real. It's right here. It's a real thing. It's a real thing. The ADL actually. Cool.
It's almost as though that they know something that we don't.
Could be. Could be. All right. So this is from, I think this is Star Wars Episode 2.
Yes.
Attack of the Clones. And Anakin, he goes, I haven't had any vaccine side effects. Oh, that's nice. And then Padme goes, which vaccine did you get? Which vaccine did you get?
Uh-oh.
And that's the whole meme. Look at that.
Dun, dun, dun. It explains why he killed so many younglings. Now it all makes sense.
This looks like this is, I guess, a new Netflix show that they're going to be coming out with. An officer and a gentleman. And I'll tell you what, I want to watch this. This looks pretty cool.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't be against this.
Yeah, these seem like a couple upstanding individuals. Nice.
I can't wait to learn their pronouns.
I wonder, yeah, they're gonna have so many pronouns. It's gonna be so much fun. Think about all the learning that we can do.
Exactly.
Here we have, I guess, Shiva maybe, and they're just beating the crap out of this dude, and it just goes, stop shitting in my streets. So.
Oh no, my friend, you're not going to shit in the street anymore. Goodness, I'm so sick of it. I'll teach you a lesson that you won't forget.
Yep. So there is that. Nice. This is a nice little meme that I found. It says, the only reason why the government would want to disarm you after 243 years is because they intend to do something that you would shoot them for.
Interesting observation.
I think there's something about that it somehow makes sense in my mind. You know, it's it goes against like the programming that I've been taught, but yet it still seems to make sense, like in a common sort of way.
You got to remember the programming. How dare you? Be sure to say all the pronouns back to back like the alphabet. That will help reinstantiate the programming.
No, thank you, Ricker. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
And this is the final meme from Poll, and it's just Lisa Simpson, and Joe Biden doesn't sniff black people. And
I actually wondered about this.
Yeah, I was thinking back to it, and it's like, no, he does. I don't think I've ever seen him sniffing a black person.
And, you know, at this point, there's like so many angles to this. I don't even know. It's like an emergent phenomenon encapsulated in a single sentence. Like, when you think about it, it's like, okay, if Joe Biden doesn't sniff black people, that either means that he's innately evil, and the people he sniffs, he potentially does allegedly inappropriate things with. So is he not sniffing the black people because he respects them more? Or is he not sniffing the black people because he has no desire to do potentially inappropriate things with them and is therefore a racist?
Yeah, this may not be determinable. I think this is an example of Schrodinger's racism.
Pretty much.
Interesting. Very interesting. Okay, so that was the poll review. Thank you for tuning in to poll review. Now we move on to the next segment. No, that's just Wikipedia page about aposematism. So that's a thing.
Oh,
Look,
interesting.
look that up. It's interesting stuff.
And by the time you look that up, you'll probably finally wake up.
Hey, remember to wake up, by the way.
There you go.
So, this is an argument that I saw on the YouTubes, and I listened to I guess like the first 10 minutes or about of it, and I decided that I hated it. So I thought that I'd bring this up and let other people hate it. So, yeah, I guess that we can just get into it. So this is I guess this paper was originally by Peter Singer. This guy named Jeffrey Kaplan is, I guess, providing it to us in a nice shortened form. So I appreciate that. I don't think that this dude is necessarily advocating for anything that Peter Singer was saying. Here, let me shift the video over a bit. But he does describe the argument, and so I want to poop all over the argument. So that's what we'll do.
Yay!
We're talking about the distinction between the supererogatory and the obligatory. Imagine this. You're getting together with a group of friends or coworkers or something like that, and you decide, you know what, this is a pretty early gathering. It's a pretty early meeting. And so wouldn't it be nice if I went and got everyone some coffee and danishes? Because some people are going to be rushing out of their house and they're not going to have time to eat breakfast. And so when everyone shows up, surprise, surprise, there is some coffee and donuts and treats or whatever that you brought for everyone and you paid for. And you're just giving it to them and you say, hey guys, I brought these for you. I want you to have them. That act, that action is supererogatory. It's extra. It's super. You didn't have to do it, but it was a really nice thing to do. It was an extra thing that you did, and it was a good thing to do. It was not obligatory. Something is obligatory if you have to do it, right? So if someone is assigned in the group to bring coffee and breakfast to every early morning meeting, and you signed up, you promised, you committed to bringing coffee and breakfast on that day, well then bringing coffee and breakfast is obligatory. And of course it would be nice if everyone thanked you for bringing those things, even if you agreed or...
So, yeah, this is a distinction that this Peter Singer guy brings up. And I guess that within the boundaries of, let's say, the civilization that we live in, we can say that mankind has invented these concepts, the thing that you're obliged to do, your duty, and then the thing that it's nice for you to do, but it's not your duty. So, like, yes, like, human beings can invent these concepts, and that's fine. Of course, these don't exist. These are things that human beings made up one day, right? Like, that's my perspective on this, because I am not someone that believes in any sort of metaphysical claims of morality, right? I just don't believe that's a real thing. I tend not to use the word morals because I don't really believe in them. I personally believe in a set of preferences, right? So, for instance, is murder good or evil? I don't care. I don't care about the concepts of good and evil. These are not objects that I believe in. However, I have a preference to not get murdered, and I also have a preference to live in a civilization where murder isn't rampant, which means that, based off of my own preferences, I don't do murder because that would be counterproductive to what I want, right? And this doesn't mean that I have no compassion for my fellow man or that I am a wicked individual. It's that I am simply stating I don't believe that there is such a thing as right and wrong, good or evil, because I look at nature, and nature is a meat grinder that's been going on for the last 4 billion years, and it doesn't seem to really have anything close to ethics or morality within it. Thus, I say that, well, it kind of seems like it's just something that humans invented one day, because we only see it within humans. And so, but I do see preferences. There's lots of preferences out there in the natural world. Like, you're hungry. Well, okay, then you have a preference to go find food, and that's fine, right? That exists everywhere. It's like human beings are the one animal that has ever built a Game Boy, and we don't see the Game Boy anywhere else in the wild or in the universe. But now, because we have built the Game Boy, we're just going to assume that it is a metaphysical truth about the universe that Game Boys are a real thing. To me, that seems like a preposterous thing. Some people disagree. What is your take so far, Breaker?
I think in this particular instance, I'm going to end up agreeing with you slightly more than I normally do on things like this. But I don't think this distinction that he's drawing of the supererogatory and the obligatory even gets down to the level of metaphysics, the way I've heard this described, because it seems to fall much more in line with your view of preferences. Now, I think what he is trying to imply with this argument is that these are something akin to Kant's categorical imperatives, and they are in a way metaphysically grounded. But I think you and I would both agree that they're not really. But I think the way that we would kind of differ on this agreement and come at it from slightly different angles, like, I see this more as like, they're not like absolute essential and metaphysical in their derivations. They seem to be on like curves over time. And sometimes they're up and sometimes they're down, kind of like the Promethean tides. It's the name of the show. He said the thing.
That's the name of the show.
Exactly. So imagine this. It's like an evolutionary timescales. Now, this would be extremely gradual. So, like, humans in the modern day and age, I think this was written like 40, 50 years ago. That's like modern standards for humans. Everything seems to have become very slow and almost frozen in place insofar as the grand game of nature goes over time. Because we've reached such a point of stability where all these curves are so very subtly flowing up and down that we don't really fully appreciate the magnitude of them. I think over longer periods of time, though, you would see things like, if I were to really put a fine point on it and simplify it, you could encapsulate the obligatory more in the domain of natural selection and the supererogatory more in the domain of sexual selection or some other ancillary form of selection that's lower down that causal chain than natural selection is. Because in the supererogatory, it's like, nothing really said, well, the obligatory is that these birds, for example, have to reproduce in order to survive and propagate their genes to the future. But the supererogatory would be, it's like, that bird didn't necessarily have to grow blue feathers and do a specific type of mating dance to attract the female's attention. That was more of just like a subtle emergent phenomenon.
Yeah, but I mean, actually, even the bird having sex and reproducing, to some extent, is supererogatory. Because, well, it could have just not, right? Like, nothing, like, from my perspective, no phenotype is under complete obligation to even reproduce or do anything. Like, things can just die out. Like, look at the modern day left, right? They're not under any sort of obligation to reproduce themselves, and they're not. And so that's okay. I don't necessarily believe that there even are obligations.
Well, in this particular example, I'm just counting death and non-existence as the zero state.
Okay. I mean, you can create an if-then statement. You can say, so like, it's not that reproduction is universally obligatory, but you can make an if-then statement and you say, if you want to make copies of yourself, then you are obliged to reproduce. So you can create that construction, but it can't stand on its own, because then you're getting into effectively metaphysical ought claims. And I don't believe in metaphysical ought claims, and I actually am not really sure where you stand on that.
Well, if you approach it from pure epistemology and don't get to the level of metaphysics, you're kind of left with a super refined and rarefied form of metaphysics, which is just pure nihilism.
Oh, like a moral nihilist? Something like that? Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, that would be the last remaining necessary metaphysic that you would ever have. And nihilism, by its very nature, is a metaphysical claim. It's like finding no intrinsic value in anything. And there's more specified forms of nihilism, like moral nihilism, for example, is there's no intrinsic value in morality. That is necessarily a metaphysical claim, because you're using axiological judgments to inject or detract the value from these things anyway.
Yeah, you and I have talked about this. I am somewhere in between a moral nihilist and a moral subjectivist, I guess. I don't know if there's a word for the thing that is in between those two objects, but because a moral subjectivist still believes in a right and wrong, it's just that they are subjective. A moral nihilist says that there cannot be anything that is right and wrong in this universe, and I state I'm more of the agnostic instead of the atheist. I'm like, yeah, I don't believe in right and wrong, but my monkey brain necessarily has limited knowledge about the universe because I don't have an infinite mind, so I can't make like the full nihilistic claim about the universe. I'm just agnostic towards it. So I don't know. I actually I'm not sure what you would call that specifically within moral philosophy. But
I
anyway,
remember we had this debate a long time ago. It's just when you get to that point, though, you kind of have to measure. It's just like, okay, what defines the value that I don't observe in the universe? Remember that ball problem I showed you before the show? Like, what is the not? Like, what would value have to be defined as if I could observe it empirically to change my mind? You still have to have a notion in your mind, if nowhere else but in your mind specifically, of what that value is.
well, I know exactly what I value, and so like this is I knew that it was going to almost immediately get into this. I value the axiology, right? I know that I have values. I know that I have preferences. I have these things. I know that I possess these things. And then over on the other hand, you have these so that's axiology. Axiology is based and dope. On the other side of things, you have the metaphysical, which is it's, as far as I can tell, it's something that humans constructed a while ago, and I'm not even sure that it means anything outside of academic writings that human beings like to write down. It's like, to me, the axiology is it's equivalent to like the gene existing, right? There's an intent, there's a kind of a directionality of life. Like life tends to want to survive and reproduce. It's just a tendency. I can't explain it. It's just a thing that it does. That's the axiology. The metaphysics is the Game Boy. It doesn't seem to exist within nature.
I imagine as we get deeper into this video, we'll find more things to argue about, but we better continue on.
Yeah. So I'm going to skip past this distinction because he continues to explain it, but I think we've been over it. So we'll skip forward a little bit.
Here's what Singer says. Because giving money is regarded as an act of charity, it is not thought that there is anything wrong with not giving. The charitable man, or if we want, because this was written in 1972, we can say the charitable person. The charitable person may be praised, but the person who is not charitable is not condemned. People do not feel in any way ashamed or guilty about spending money on new clothes or a new car instead of giving it to famine relief. Indeed, the alternative does not occur to them. What's the alternative? The alternative is not getting those new clothes and not getting that new car, and instead taking that money that you would have spent on new clothes and just, wearing your old clothes and taking that money and giving it to an organization that will help people, that will save people who are dying of famine, right? That possibility, the possibility of not spending money on luxuries, does not occur to most people or to virtually anyone. This way of looking at the matter cannot be justified. this way of looking at the matter is the way that we all look at the matter. That is,
Right. And this is how you end up with communism. Nice. Let's totally go down that road.
Well, there's like another line of argumentation you could do with this to say it's like certain people with certain religious proclivities may feel that they have a type of deontological injunction and a type of obligation to be charitable in that way. It doesn't necessarily require something as cantankerous as communism to bring that about.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that if you're if you're really religious, you probably don't care about material things that much, and it's you care about going to heaven. So what do you want to do? You want to give to the poor because that'll make God look upon you more favorably or something. I mean, yeah, sure, you can also have that, but I mean, okay, fine. This principle either leads to a theocracy or a communist theocracy. So,
I don't even think necessarily that, because even in a purely like individualist, like full libertarian world, you would still have things like obligations and supererogatory things. Because, for example, even in Ancapistan,
you have contracts.
you like have this, like contracts, like however those are defined and articulated. That's a whole other can of worms. But that represents a type of that would necessarily have to be metaphysical in nature obligation, because it comes from nowhere else. I mean, if you live in a state of utter freedom, you are literally choosing to enter into a binding obligation.
Well, no, like a contract doesn't have to be metaphysical. It can come purely from axiology, and that's where I have preferences, right? I shake hands with you, and we agree not to murder each other, and I will not be violating this contract because my values state that it doesn't make sense to, and that's entirely personal. It's entirely within my own mind, and my wish to have a constructive civilization, right? Like, I'm not saying that these super erogatory and obligatory concepts aren't useful. Like, they're clearly useful. Our civilization is based off of obligations. Like, they're extremely useful tools. Like how a Game Boy is extremely useful for entertaining a 5-year-old. It's just that you can't create any like truth statements off of them because they don't really exist. In the same way that like cars are useful, but they don't exist metaphysically. But he's gonna get into the actual reasoning here and write down like the specific arguments that are being made, and this is what I really wanted to get into.
Yay.
okay, here's the argument. Singer doesn't lay out the argument like this with 4 premises and 1 conclusion or anything. I'm pulling these out of the paper, but this is indeed the argument. Here's how it goes. Let's take it one step at a time. 1. If it is in our power to prevent something very bad from happening, without thereby sacrificing anything of moral significance, then we must morally do it.
Nope. No, I'm just going to say nope. That one doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, you can kind of get some. There's weak spots where that can break in like extreme situations where maximal pragmatism is required, like in leadership roles where you're going to order a legion of soldiers into a battle that they're not going to win, and the vast majority of them are going to die or be captured. But you have to do that in order to win the broader war as a strategic maneuver. So you literally have to make a choice to do like something that is, as a matter of fact, morally reprehensible under that framework. But in the greater scheme of things, it is a necessary sacrifice that had to be made. But you have to get to like really extreme points before it starts to break.
Well, I mean, for instance, right? Like, okay, the second point here says that hunger, disease, and other sources of suffering, disability, and death are very bad. So that's the type of very bad things that we're talking about here. Okay, first of all, this is something that definitely only applies to other humans, right? Because I can go out and I can hunt a deer, or I can be, I'm eating a cow that was slaughtered at some farm or something, and that was something very bad that happened to that animal. And I totally let that happen because I want to eat meat, because that's my preference, to eat some venison. Uh, and by the way, venison is so tasty. Like, oh my god, dude, deer is such a tasty animal. Um,
Yay for deers.
yeah. Oh dear. So obviously this is something that is only applying to humans, right? It's not applying to animals. But okay, fine. Maybe this is only meant to apply to humans. Well,
Yeah, it's more of an ethical construction, which is by its very nature, it's like this guy doesn't even get it. This is why I said in the beginning it doesn't get anywhere near the metaphysical, because this is like so anthropocentric that it's too particular.
yeah. Well, but he's also
It's not particular to humans. It's particular to a very particular type of human from a very particular cultural background in a very particular context.
yes, yeah. But okay, so he's saying if we can prevent very bad things from happening, without other really bad things happening, then we must morally prevent the bad thing from happening. Now see, this, I think that this is a metaphysical claim. Because number one, he's bringing up morals. Morals are metaphysical. Number two, he's saying that we must do something. He's entering in an ought statement that ascends it to the metaphysical level as well. So I would say this is actually a metaphysical claim that he's making. It's a preposterous one, in my opinion. But okay, I think.
Well, it's compartmentalized to be particular about humans. So within the sphere of humans, it reaches metaphysics, but it does not reach metaphysics in a universal term.
No, only for humans, clearly. Because actually, let's say that he was, let's say that he was applying this to animals as well, because he's like vegan, and he's like, no, you shouldn't ever harm an animal ever.
Then we'd all die.
Well, no, I mean, maybe we could subsist only off of plants, but then again, like, you have to offer some amount of moral consideration to plants as well. They are living beings, and so you also have to consider them. So should we just not eat anything, plants or animals, or fungi? In that case, we are all dead. And the natural world doesn't seem to give any shits about what this guy is saying, because in the natural world, sometimes, like a baby shark will eat its smallest brother or sister just for the extra nutrients. Now that seems morally abhorrent, right? Like it would be weird to see, let's say that you had twins, and then and then they're born, but then one of them literally just kills and eats the other one. That would be like, oh my god, that's like a horror scene. But that kind of stuff happens in nature. So
yeah, you're making a very good point. How applying like moral schemas derived from the minds of social primates specifically, and trying to universally apply them to the totality of nature and even up to the level of the universe seems kind of, when articulated in this way, it seems kind of ridiculous in a way. Like these loaded terms of like, well, he's talking about like people in bad countries and bad situations. It's all impinging upon humanity.
Yeah.
This is a very socialist construction.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's specifically socialist. And then you also run into these other issues where, okay, you're saying that you must morally do this thing that prevents the bad thing from happening. As long as you're not causing something worse to happen, right? Okay, fine. And you're saying you must do that. However, what about this? If you don't give food to Africa, then people will starve. However, if you constantly give them food, then you're causing their population to expand without them having the infrastructure at home to actually support that level of a population, and also you're driving out the ability to productively farm in that area, because you cannot, like, as a farmer, you cannot compete with free resources, which means that they never really, they can't really ever do farming, and then it's very difficult for them to develop their economy. And now they have a large population that is dependent on outside foreign aid, and if that foreign aid were to ever dry up, let's say due to, I don't know, a worldwide financial collapse, then you've actually ended up making even more people starve than if you had done nothing about that in the past. But how can you know, right? The world is complex and emergent, so you couldn't have necessarily predicted that this is the situation that you would wind up creating. But actually, by doing something good, you've actually created a greater evil, and this doesn't account for that, because human beings don't have perfect knowledge of if their actions are going to make good or bad things happen. They don't know. So
well, then he would just throw in like some type of penultimately vague and nebulous term, like, well, within reason, quote unquote, like something like that. It's like, well, define within reason. Yeah. Define reason.
I'm reasoning
that you're
this
saying
out right
like,
now.
Yeah.
I'm literally reasoning this out right now. This is completely within reason. But okay, let's. The first argument here is the one that I hate the most. The other ones are just kind of backing it up, so we can just listen through the rest of it.
That is, prevent that very bad thing from happening. Okay, that's premise one. I'll just give you a hint. This is going to be the most controversial claim, right? It's a very general claim. It's talking about, very bad things. It's got this big category of very bad things, and then it's got this other category of things with, things that you might sacrifice that are not of moral significance. That's another big category. It's a big, grand claim about what you must do morally, and it's a very general claim. So one is going to be the most controversial claim in this argument. So we'll come back to this. If you're looking for this claim, by the way, in the reading, then go to page 235. There's one big paragraph in the middle of page
235. I hope to God that this paper isn't 235 pages long. I hope
it's obviously more than that, because he's only getting to the first part of the fucking argument by that point.
Yeah, I mean, but I know how I know how journals are structured, so it's like, you could have
appendixes and I think Professor so-and-so and adjunct so-and-so.
No, you could have you could have 30 different articles in this journal. Like, okay, this is the monthly publishing of this journal.
I see what you mean. It's like a magazine.
Yeah, and there's 30 different articles in there, and so maybe his paper is only 10 pages long, but it happens to exist on 235. Like, that could be, or he published a book. I don't know which one it is. I have no idea.
35, and this claim happens, not phrased exactly like this, but basically like this, at the sort of end of that paragraph. Anyway, let's keep going. Step 2. Hunger, disease, and other sources of suffering, disability, and death are very bad.
Are they? Are they always really bad? Or is that just what I would say that this is an axiological claim. It's this dude's gut feeling that these are very bad. And that's fine. That's totally fine. You can say that these are very bad according to you. But maybe according to other people, they're not so bad.
And I can give you a real life example of exercising pragmatism where this breaks. It's like, I don't know if they still do this anymore. I imagine in some parts of the world that they do. But we've all heard of the childhood disease chickenpox, right?
Yes.
There are instances where parents, if they have a kid with chickenpox, will structure like a play date to have all the other kids come over and play with the kid with chickenpox to infect all of the children with chickenpox on purpose so that they build up an immunity. Because if you don't get chickenpox early in life and you get it later in life, it becomes shingles, which can be a debilitatingly painful or even fatal disease.
That is exactly what my mom did with me. I think I got chickenpox when I was 4 or something, and I still remember how itchy it was.
Yeah, I think I had the vaccine. Vaccine, Jay. So.
Interesting. But also hunger, suffering, death. Maybe to some people these are bad, but if you were to, I don't know, look at Stalin or Mao. These are actually good things, right? This is how you weed out the population. From the perspective of natural selection, all of these are tools by which animals are selected for. If you just didn't have death, period, then there couldn't be any form of selection, and then nothing would ever improve. Like the reason why it is that we get to be humans, that get to think about these things and have these silly thoughts, is precisely because these are the tools of natural selection. This is how we arrived here. So I'm not going to say that they're inherently very bad. I dislike experiencing these things personally. I'm not wishing that other people experience an excess of any of these things. Like, I'm not wishing it for anyone. But it does seem to be just a fact about the world that you can't... I don't think that you're ever going to be able to get around it. So why label it as very bad? I would label it as something more like gravity. It just is, right? Like, does gravity prevent you from like jumping up really high and making it to the moon? Yes, it does. And so in that way, gravity kind of like keeps you down. But it is...
Damn you, gravity!
Damn you! But it is just an inherent fact about the world. So why are you labeling it as bad? It's a thing. It's part of the constraints that we exist under, and that's what it is, right? That's how I would see it. But I mean, different people, different perspectives. Let's go ahead on to point number 3.
Okay. Those are some examples of very bad things. We see how this, and premise 2, by the way, seems totally plausible. Hunger, disease, and other sources of suffering, disability, and death are very bad. Yes. That's plausible. Hunger is very bad.
It's
Real
plausible.
hunger, where someone doesn't have enough food to eat. And disease.
I wouldn't say it's likely.
And other things that cause people to suffer or become disabled or die. All of that is bad. Yep, okay. Good job. Premise 2, very plausible. Premise 3, the luxuries on which we spend money are not of moral significance.
I wonder what you would describe as a luxury in this case, right? Like maybe we could define a golden Rolex watch as a luxury. Maybe. But are shoes a luxury?
Technically, yes.
Yeah.
Because, vast populations of the world don't even wear them most of the time.
Yeah. Or like, actually, this is something I know. The Australian Aborigines, they have this like adaptation that they've evolved where they can actually just sleep on the ground without shelter. Now, I don't think that there's any other group of people that can do that, but they can. So I'm going to label shelter and blankets as a luxury as well.
There you go. I wonder why they don't get bitten by spiders and snakes.
It's a good question. I guess maybe they also evolved. You see, they have been living in Africa for a long time, so they probably,
Australia, actually.
Yeah. Wait, did I say Africa? Sorry.
Yeah.
Australia. They've been
There you
living in
go.
Australia for like a pretty long time, so I assume that they've developed some sort of like chitinous armor that prevents them from getting bitten by snakes and spiders. Because otherwise, how the hell does any person survive in Australia? It seems impossible.
Or they're also tribal, so... And this is a thing, I heard someone mention this recently. It's kind of a bizarre thing when you think about it. Well, our sleep schedules are both kind of wonky, but people with a more normal circadian rhythm that rise in the morning and go to bed at a reasonable time at night after the sun goes down, there is this phenomenon, not everyone has this, but there is this phenomenon where people usually tend to inexplicably wake up around between 3 and 4 a.m. and then just go back to bed. And it's not always due to them needing to go to the bathroom or just superficially feeling thirsty or something. There's something more deeper to that, and when you think about it evolutionarily, it makes sense. Because if you have certain people sleeping and everyone goes to sleep around the same time, you're going to want a few people to wake up and check if there's any like encroaching animals or if John has a spider on his face that's about to kill him.
You know what? Actually, this is an interesting thing as well. Your natural sleep cycle, it changes as you age, right? So a teenager, they want to stay up real late and they want to sleep in real late. That's what they want to do. And then like old people, like my dad, he likes to go to sleep at like 8 p.m. and wake up at like 4 a.m. or something like that, like something absurd. And like a teenager might want to go to bed at 4 a.m. So there is actually like there's an advantageous factor about that for tribes. Like, okay, fine. The young people take the first shift and the old people take the second shift of like watching out. So there's always somebody awake.
Exactly.
That would be extremely advantageous. But our modern day civilization has decided that there is only one appropriate sleep schedule, and that is whatever makes it so that you can appropriately work a 9 to 5. And that is the only correct one, and if you are any different than that, if there is any variability from that, then you're the weird one, I guess.
That also would explain why not everyone has that particular quirk where they wake up between 3 and 4 a.m.
Yeah, I usually tend to sleep all the way through the I do like the full 8 hours usually, or 7. I usually don't sleep for 8. I sleep for like 7.
You know what? I noticed something about my own sleep. Now, there's probably other physiological factors for this, but usually when I'm fasting, I'll sleep for like an exact period of time, like between 6 to 7 hours, something like that, and then very quickly and abruptly wake up. When I'm eating normally, like if I eat during the evening, I actually get the 8 hours in. But if I eat during the morning, because I only eat once a day, if I eat during the morning and then go to bed hungry, I snap awake at like that 6 or 7, like really easily. As I'm really ready to go.
Huh. Okay, interesting. Back to the video.
Yay.
So the kinds of luxuries he's talking about are these luxuries, right? Buying new clothes. When your old clothes, although out of fashion, or a little tattered, or whatever, are perfectly good. Or buying a new car. When your old car...
I mean, look, in general, I think that that's what I tend to do. I have clothing that I have had since high school, and that I still wear. Specifically some t-shirts and some underwear. Are they a little bit tattered? Yes. But also, I'm a dude, and I don't like buying new clothes. So it just kind of... I don't tend to buy a lot of luxuries because I don't care about luxuries, but some people do, and you know what? That's fine. If they want to get luxuries, that's on them. I don't care. I wouldn't try to tell anyone what they should and shouldn't do because I don't make fucking ought statements. I make if-then statements, but I don't make like universal ought statements because I'm a libertarian. Yeah.
Although not as good as a new car, is still a good enough car, right? Or the example that I gave earlier, buying a cup of coffee when you could make the coffee at home. Really going...
Or just not have coffee. Coffee itself is a luxury.
Going to any restaurant ever, right, counts as a luxury in this sense. I mean, you can always just, for less money, make food at home. This connects with the idea of moral significance or of some things not being of moral significance, right? Sacrificing anything of moral significance. That's part of the first premise also. So premise 3 is specifying the kinds of things that aren't of moral significance. And once we understand...
Okay, but I think that they do end up being, like, within this line of reasoning, like, this is an absurd thing that I'm about to say, but within this line of reasoning, luxuries can become morally significant, right? So let's say that we've reached a point of bounty in excess where 99% of the people on Earth can feed themselves and they have clothing, but like let's say that there's like 1% of people they just don't have shoes, right? In that case, the shoes become of moral significance because there's only 1% of the people that don't have them because they're too abjectly poor, and so it is now morally significant to get people the shoes that they need, even though in another context, like let's say 3,000 years ago, shoes would be a massive luxury, right? So like what is luxurious is dependent on the context, by what point in human history you're looking at, and things that previously were massive luxuries can now fall into being of moral significance. It's entirely context dependent. It's like, yeah, 5,000 years ago, shoes were a luxury, but nowadays, if you can't afford shoes, oh my God, that's terrible. Like that is of moral significance. We can improve your life by giving you shoes. And like I could imagine, like, you know, when smartphones first came out, they were a complete and total luxury. At this point, they seem to be extremely necessary for just existing in the modern day world because everyone else has one, and so they've gone from being a luxury to, I guess, something that might have some sort of moral significance within this framework. Of course, I disagree with this entire framework, but within this framework, actually, you can see that smartphones have developed some amount of moral significance in this stupid structure. So, like these aren't even constant things that are being described. Like this is, again, this is, I hate this entire line of reasoning.
What Singer means by luxuries, he's right. These things are not of moral significance. They're not a big deal. If you go without them, you're not really worse off. 4. By donating money to relief agencies like Oxfam, we could prevent hunger, disease, and other sources of suffering, disability, and death. Well, that's just saying that there's a very specific way, an easy way, right, to prevent these things which premise 2 established were very bad.
Okay. If I give you heroin, then I can prevent you from experiencing pain. And pain and suffering are examples of very bad things. Right? Now, if I give you heroin, I can eliminate your suffering. Maybe it's only temporary, but I can do that. Ergo, I am obliged to provide you with heroin.
Yeah, this is the type of thing that me and Parallax have talked about this a lot, where all of these like utilitarian ethical schemas like this, basically, all lead to something like the destroy all humans paradigm at the end of the day. Eventually, you do reach this zenith point where maximal alleviation of all suffering becomes the prime moral imperative, and the most effective and immediate way to do that is to kill everybody.
Yeah, pretty much. This is, the thing is that, okay, the heroin is an extreme example. But like there are other things that are similar to heroin almost, like the example that I gave to just providing endless food to Africa. If you constantly give to people, they become dependent and they can't better themselves. And dependency is not always the best thing for people. In fact, sometimes it's better that people kind of solve stuff on their own. Like not all the time, you know, like humans are a social species. We have families and we're kind of tribal. So like there is some amount of like humans helping each other, but to some extent, like humans also need to kind of work shit out on their own sometimes. So it's not really always the responsibility, I guess, in these words, there isn't. I don't believe that there is an obligation to just always help people out, because why? Like, it is, number one, is it necessarily a good thing to help people out? I'm not sure, because I mean, would you rather give a man a fish or teach a man to fish, right? And then even so, I'm not sure that it's my obligation, because I don't agree that I must do anything. Like you can write like a nice little paragraph saying that I must do something. Fine. But I also don't care about your little paragraph that you wrote. I ain't gonna do shit. Like, it's not my responsibility, okay?
You see how this is kind of designed to. This is particulars within particulars within particulars. This is designed to appeal to a very specific type of human with a very specific type of social and emotional sensibilities that is by no means universal to all humans in any given population of humans.
Yes. Yeah, that does seem to be what's going on here essentially. This is meant to appeal to left-leaning academics, the bleeding heart types, as far as I can tell. Because this does not appeal to me whatsoever. But let's keep going.
Premise 4, is it true? By donating money to relief agencies like Oxfam, we could prevent hunger.
Oh, and this isn't even accounting for the fact that most charities are basically scams. You know, I'm just pointing that out there as well. Kind of a side point, not that important to like the philosophical line of reasoning. I'm just saying most charities.
We have no evidence to indicate any certain political family that's name starts with C of any wrongdoings.
Yeah, that foundation was like totally above board, 100%.
Exactly.
Hunger, disease, and other sources of suffering, disability, and death. Yes, premise 4 is true. This is true. These organizations do this. You can give them the money, and then they will...
4 is true. 4 is true. You could prevent these things. That is true. I'm not saying... 4 is actually the most correct. You could, in theory, prevent these bad things by doing these things. Fine. I don't care.
Prevent these things. This, premise 4, is just an empirical claim. It's just a claim about whether these organizations actually do the thing that they say they're going to do, and the answer is yes, they do it. Okay, and then here's the conclusion. And we've already reached this conclusion. We've already talked through this conclusion. Therefore, we must. Where is it? Must. We are obligated. It's not supererogatory. It's not extra. This is something you have to do. And so the conclusion gets us something you have to do. We must morally donate the money that we spend on luxuries to relief agencies. And we don't get to spend them on luxuries. This is the argument. Okay, so now is a good
preposterous argument, but okay, this is the argument. Fine.
Time to re-emphasize how radical this conclusion is. We're about to assess the argument. We're really going to focus almost entirely on premise 1 because premise 1 is the only controversial premise in the argument. Everything else, steps 2, 3, and 4, I mean, these just seem to be obviously correct, obviously true statements, and the argument is valid. So, well, 1 is the only option.
Well, I would question 2 and 3. 4 is fine. I would say 4 is okay. I accept 4.
That we could argue against, and we're going to try to argue against it, and Singer is going to say no, and none of those arguments work. Okay, but focusing again on the conclusion for a minute before we get back to premise 1, this is pretty radical. No one thinks that we have a moral obligation. None of your friends, none of your family think that you must not buy a cup of coffee. You must not buy a new car. You must not buy new clothes. Instead, you must take all of that money and donate it to some organization like Oxfam.
Okay, this is what happens if you do this, right? This is exactly what will happen. Let's say that everyone in the whole world just agreed to this line of reasoning overnight. They wouldn't. It's absurd. But let's say that they did. Well, in that case, you wouldn't be buying luxuries. So, parts of the economy would just kind of shut down, right? Like, I guess that people would have to determine, okay, is the internet a luxury? Kind of. So instead of investing all that money into internet infrastructure, we just need to generate more food and clean drinking water and send it over into the third world. Then, our economy will suffer, and people in general they'll get poorer, but we still need to constantly be donating money. So any amount of excess money that you have does not go back into the economy; it goes into donations. Any excess money, right? Now at this point, people are no longer really incentivized to work because, well, you or work like higher level jobs, right? Like maybe you can technically get by on minimum wage. So like, why would you even try to go become a doctor or something? And because that's just a whole bunch of extra work, and you're donating all of your money anyway. So like, do you really want to be working? Well, okay, fine. Maybe these people are so morally gung-ho about helping other people that they still want to try to go out and make a whole bunch of money because they really believe in just making a ton of money and then just donating it. But then it's like, okay, is there a need for doctors that much anymore, right? Because maybe some people, they like to go in for like a checkup every 3 months. But isn't that kind of a luxury, right? Like, maybe you can get away with like 1 year, or like once every like 4 years or something. Or once every like 10 years, like me. So, that means that now there's less demand for doctors. Like, the entire economy becomes begging for money, and then any excess money that you have, you give to other beggars that made less money than you that day. It's just a begging-based economy. where everyone is just subsistence living with as little as possible, and everyone is miserable all the time. But and we're producing less, like a lot less is actually being produced. But we're getting closer and closer to equity, right? Just absolute equity, where everyone is just kind of vaguely miserable, and they just have the least amount of luxuries, at least compared to everyone else. This is how you become the lowest common denominator civilization, where just everyone is the same, but it sucks. This is what you would logically get if you implemented this system and everyone just implicitly agreed with it.
Well, up to a point, you would actually get something slightly worse than that when you consider more nuances of human nature. What you would get is like things that happened in Soviet Russia and other old communist bloc countries, where people just turn into total malcontents and vindictive fucking thieves. And they steal public benches to use them as house furniture and shit like that.
No, because in my premise, we're assuming that we have eliminated human nature, and we have replaced human nature with this moral paradigm, right? So even if everyone implicitly believed this, and we didn't have any thievery because, well, that would be against the greater good, it would still suck. because everything about this it's completely against human nature. And, you know, from my perspective, you never go against human nature. That's the one thing that, if you're trying to instantiate a political system, you better make damn sure that it's at least parallel to human nature. Because if it's not, it's going to get wrecked. And this is barely tangentially related to human nature. Like, this has nothing to do with human nature. Okay. I guess that there are some counter examples, or like some, like I guess that Singer has identified some arguments that people might make, and he's countered those arguments. So I want to see if I haven't watched this video. I have no idea what these arguments are. So let's see if we can withstand what Singer has to give us. I'm quite curious.
Big brain.
That's right.
One of these relief agencies. No one lives their life like this, or very few people. Peter Singer, by the way, he's still alive. I met him, right? We had dinner once. He gave a talk, and then anyway, I know him. I know celebrities.
Why the hell would Singer be going out to dinner? That doesn't make any sense. Dinner is a luxury.
And I bet he wore $2,000 shoes and a $5,000 suit while doing it.
No, I'm pretty sure that actually they got dinner at his this is what I'm going to assume, right? Peter Singer, he lives in a very tiny apartment, or maybe a shack in the woods. He wears a burlap sack for clothing, and when he's talking about had dinner together, he means that Peter he took a potato out of his like little garden, and he cut it in half, and he cooked it over a fire, and then they both ate that half of a potato, and that was the entire dinner. I'm going to assume that that's what he's talking about. It definitely wouldn't be at a restaurant with waiters.
I don't know, a freaking house, that's pretty luxurious.
You're right. Why not a cave?
Yeah, just a naturally occurring formation of some kind, probably.
Peter Singer, who's still alive, kind of lives his life like this. He donates a very significant, non-trivial portion of his income, which is not enormous, it's not an enormous income, to relief agencies. He does this. He does not live a luxurious life, not a life that we would normally call luxurious. Okay, so there's one. And then maybe there's, I don't know, a few of his friends who he convinced. But most people don't live their life like this. The conclusion of this paper is that most people, you included, are doing something bad every day.
You're
And you don't even
bad.
realize it. Okay, enough.
Thank God I don't believe in things like good and bad, right? Because if I believed
It's
in these,
because you're bad. Like Orange Man. Orange Man bad.
if I believed in these constructions, then I might actually be concerned. Oh my God, am I being bad? Luckily, I don't believe in good and bad, so none of these things matter. I don't give a shit what this guy says. But let's keep watching.
About how radical this conclusion is or whatever and how much it departs from your day-to-day life. Let's get to premise one. This is the controversial premise. What does Singer say to support such a broad, sweeping claim? Here's what he says. This is a rather famous example that Singer gives to support premise one. Here it is. If I am walking past a shallow pond and see a child drowning in it, I ought to wade in and pull the child out. This will mean getting my clothes muddy, but this is insignificant, while the death of the child would presumably be a very bad thing.
I mean, number one, I'm not going to agree that I ought do anything. Fuck off. In general, right? But, I don't know, man. Like, maybe, maybe sometimes natural selection works in mysterious ways, Sometimes it's not always the worst thing if a few eggs get broken. Now, would I personally wade into a pond to save a drowning child? Yes, I would. That's because it's generally speaking my preference that I don't like suffering to exist in the world. It's not something that I'm happy about. If I could save a child, I 100% would. Plus, it benefits me, right? Number one, I get to feel good about myself, right? Yeah, I saved a child. Fuck yeah, that's a great story. I can tell that to people. Number two, I'm a hero. I'm the one who saved the child. I went out on my way, got my clothes money, I saved the child. Number three, now if there's any hot women watching, they're like, oh my God, that guy's awesome, and then they'll want to sleep with me, right? So there's like many benefits to me doing this. And as a bonus, I get to prevent the death of a child. Isn't that nice? Yeah, that's worth it. But there's nothing that says that I must do this or that I necessarily will do this, right? So, for instance, let's say that this isn't just a random sweet child. Let's say this is the kid that is like just the worst little sociopathic monster that has been relentlessly bullying my kid at school, and just fucking physically and emotional, just heavy abuse. Let's say that it's that kid. Do I maybe just keep walking and pretend like maybe I didn't see the kid drowning in the middle of the pond? In that case, maybe I do, because fuck that kid. It's at least for me, I think it's a little bit contextual. I don't know, but okay.
Okay, got the example, right? There's a shallow pond or a fountain. When I teach this class on campus, every college campus, including the one where I work in North Carolina, every college campus has like a fountain somewhere, right? There's a fountain there. A small child is drowning in the fountain and will die. You are walking by. You can easily step in and save the child. The cost to you will be just a few moments, and, well, your clothes are going to get wet or muddy, right? Muddy if it's a pond, or wet if it's a fountain, or whatever. This sacrifice, by the way, is not of moral significance, right? It is insignificant that your clothes are going to get a little wet. Oh, and you're on your way to something where you didn't want your clothes to be wet. Okay, that's not a very significant sacrifice. But the death of the child, the drowning death of the child, in almost all circumstances, would be a very bad thing. Well, the thought is, go from this example, if you agree with...
Yeah, I mean, you know, in this particular line of reasoning, right? Like this is supposed to this almost seems like an emotional ploy to me. Like I dislike bringing in like, oh, there's little Timmy's gonna die, because I feel like it's almost like emotionally manipulative. But I will also say that throughout so much of human history, humans have done much worse than just not save a drowning child. Sometimes children would be bought and sold as slaves. Sometimes they would be executed because, you know, just a village was being taken over by the Huns, and well, you gotta eliminate some people. People have done much worse things throughout human history, and it seems to, I don't know, it's a part of the world, and I don't think that you can put a must or an ought claim. I don't think that you can put an ought claim on any of this, because I don't agree in the ought premise. Like, okay, if there were such a thing as an ought, and the worst thing that could possibly happen is that a child drowns, then I could agree, okay, I ought try to go save the kid, right? I could agree to that. I don't agree to any of these foundational premises, though. So
One thing I'll also tell you about this, to add an extra dimension to this, is like, especially in the modern Western world, there's also a weird paradox that happens that hasn't yet been discussed. Let's do like the child in the fountain or pond example again, but this time take into account all of the tortious liabilities that exist in Western legal systems, especially. And think to yourself, it's like, you could actually be potentially sued for causing some type of injury. Like if you grab the child's arm and dislocate their shoulder or something, even though you technically saved their life, you could actually be sued for injury to the child and end up in jail, or have to pay a massive fine.
That's true. Also, as a human, I care about proximal things fundamentally, right? If there is a child drowning and he's right in front of me, then I'll probably do something about it. Assuming that I know how to swim. I do, but I'm a white guy, so of course I know how to swim. But
oh shit.
But that's proximal to me, right? If there's a kid that is drowning 5 states over, I don't care. I'm sorry, I just don't care that much. I only really care about the things that are proximal to me. So, like, I care more about the one child in front of me that's drowning than the thousands of children that are starving in Africa, right? Because one is right next to me, the other one is a continent away, right? As a human, I necessarily give more shits about things that are more proximal to me. So, fine, you can make this argument because it's so proximal, but you are not going to give me, you're not going to bring me to care about something that is happening 3,000 miles away. You're just not. And you're not going to make most people care about that because, again, you have what is proximal and then that which is, like, way over there. Human beings tend not to give a shit about things that are happening way over there, and that's okay. I find that to be an acceptable fact about human nature. In fact, I think it's better that human beings care more about the proximal as opposed to shit that's happening 3,000 miles away. It keeps us grounded, keeps us within our communities.
One thing I'll say about that, I remember Sam Harris actually brought up some study about this that actually went into exactly this. And it was a study that I think was done by these charity organizations with the commercials of like, the starving African kids and stuff, like one of these charitable, like Oxfam, something like that. And Sam Harris is going over the conclusions of this study, which actually found exactly the thing you're talking about, where if they did a commercial where there was a group of starving kids on the screen, people on average ended up donating less money, to where when they did commercials where it just focused on one individual kid and maybe in like a bunch of different scenes, but each scene only contained one kid, that would actually cause people to donate more money.
Yeah, that makes sense because you can imagine taking care of one child. It's overwhelming to imagine taking care of like 50 kids. Like at that point, it's like, no, that's too large of a problem. I'm a human. I can't deal with that.
And that's why the nuances like between the obligatory and the supererogatory are like this infinitely varied continuum that's always going to vary between human population to human population.
Yeah. All right, let's continue.
What Singer says about this example, and I suggest, of course, that you do. If someone just showed up at a meeting and said, hey, there was this kid drowning, but I didn't want to have wet clothes for this gathering, so I just let the kid drown and die. You would be horrified. You would think that this person was evil, that they had done an evil thing. You would not let your friends or family associate with this kind of person. Well, if you agree with Singer about this specific case, then Singer says we should be able to abstract from this case to a more general principle, and you should hold this more general principle, and the more general principle is premise one of the argument. The idea is that, well, a child drowning in a pond, that's a very bad thing, but it's not bad because it has to do with water or children. You know, an adult drowning and dying is also a bad thing, or even an adult dying by some other means is a bad thing, right? What's relevant here is not...
I care more about the drowning child than I care about the drowning adult.
Yeah, and that's why he's kind of unraveling a bit of Peter Singer's punch, and this kind of shows you that there's a whole bunch of proximal and tertiary ulterior motives that went into this fucking reasoning. Like, there's a reason he's specifically using the example of a child.
Yeah.
And this guy is like a bit overthinking it and getting into a domain is where it's like, well, you know, it more in general, but no, the reason of the original thing was the child for a very specific reason that I'm sure Peter Singer was very well aware of.
Yeah, it's like, okay, let's say that a child doesn't know how to swim, but they're stupid and they jump into a pond, right? Okay, well they're a child, right? So to some extent, they make mistakes. We know that children make mistakes, and for the most part, they have to be protected. So that's just kind of like a rule in humans. Children are stupid; they have to be protected, right? But let's say that a 25-year-old adult, knowing that they don't know how to swim, jumps into a pond. To a certain extent, I'm like, well, buddy, you're an adult. You did that to yourself. Like, I'm not gonna necessarily risk my life, because, like, you know, I mean, there's also the thing where it's like, you know, people that are drowning, if you try to rush out and save them, sometimes you end up drowning as well because they just cling on to you with dear life. Like, I'm like, if an adult did something that stupid, then to a certain extent, it's like, well, that's the Darwin Award, right? Like, you did that to yourself. Like, I give way less shits about adults because they theoretically they're smart enough to make their own choices. Like, what set of stupid decisions did you make that you are now in the middle of a pond drowning and you don't know how to swim? Like, what brought you to the situation, motherfucker?
How did it come to this?
Yeah. Like, I care so much less about the adult.
Not that it's a child or that it's a water-involving death. It's that this is a easily preventable death. The death is a bad thing. And the fact that your clothes would get muddy, that's a morally insignificant thing. But the fact that it's your clothes and it's mud, that doesn't matter if it's something else that you have to sacrifice. If, for example, instead of your clothes...
Okay, yeah, but this is an extreme example, right? Where it's you get to save an entire life and you just have to muddy your clothes, right? From the perspective of like a human, there are some trade-offs that make sense. Okay, is this person's life worth more than my clothes? This random stranger's life is worth more than, like, not even my clothes, just my clothes getting temporarily muddy. I can always wash them later. Okay, yeah, sure, that's fine. But then, when you try to start expanding this outwards, I think you'll notice that you're probably going to agree less and less. Like, would you give up your car in order to, would you give up your car in order to prevent a homeless person from ODing on heroin today? Like, they'll probably OD on heroin tomorrow, but for whatever reason, you have to trade your car in, and then just for today, they won't OD on heroin. Or fentanyl, or whatever. I'm not gonna make that trade. I don't give that many shits about the homeless person who is gonna OD on fentanyl. I just, and I literally care more about my car than that random person. I do. It's a fact. Does that make me evil? Maybe. I don't give a shit. I don't believe in evil. I believe in preferences, and I know that I give more of a shit about my car existing. I do, because I have to look out for myself. That is a fact about nature. That's how everything has ever been designed in all of nature. You have to look out for yourself. So, am I willing to make the trade of getting my clothes money to save a drowning child? Yes, probably. But when you start to expand that trade outwards, suddenly I go, at a certain point I go, no, that's not worth the trade. Nope, I'm not doing that. There's no fucking way.
Snap indeed. And this is how you know that all this is kind of like primarily impinges upon an argument from emotion and an appeal to emotion at the end of the day. That's all this is really doing, because if you don't have that visceral, knee-jerk emotional reaction that overrides your rationality to this, you're more likely to agree with it. If you think about it from just one or two other angles, it suddenly collapses from like 95% effective down to like 10% effective.
Yeah, I would say, at least on me, this is not at all effective. But we're almost through it. Let's get her done.
Getting wet or muddy, I don't know, your car is going to get dirty. Or you're going to lose your shoelaces. The shoelaces will be gone forever. You'll have to sacrifice your shoelaces. And you'll have to get whole new shoelaces, and that'll be kind of a pain in the butt. The point is this. The difference between one way of dying and another way of dying, or one morally insignificant sacrifice and another morally insignificant sacrifice, the difference between these doesn't matter. So you can go from a specific case like this to a general claim like one. And the thought is, if you agree with Singer about this specific case,
and I don't,
then you have to accept premise one of the argument.
And I don't.
Okay, so there are two ways in which you might think you can't go from this example to this premise.
No, I can see how you can lead there. Like, yeah, I can see how if you accept that premise, then you can accept that argument. Like, I get that. But they're all silly. This is all silliness. This is a word game for bleeding heart academics.
Or another way to put this point is you might think that there are two big differences between this shallow pond example and the example of giving up your luxuries, the luxuries in your life, a new car, a cup of coffee, that sort of thing, a massage. There's a difference between this example and giving up those things to save someone from a famine. There's two ways in which there might be a relevant difference. These are the two relevant differences that Singer considers and responds to. Here they are. Okay, here's the first
Oh, look at that. We already brought up proximity. Nice.
potentially relevant difference.
We haven't watched this video.
Proximity. In the shallow pond example, you're right next to the child. You're very close to this child. Whereas in your day-to-day life, you are not right next to, you're not near the people who are dying of famine or of whatever other very terrible things that organizations like Oxfam fight against. Well, is that a morally relevant difference?
Yes.
Is that a way in which we block this example from generalizing to something like premise one? Singer thinks no.
Yes. I am a human. I was built to care about things that are my tribe. I inherently care more about proximal things than abstract other side of the continent things. Inherently.
Yeah, this only works on a localized scale with things that you immediately care about, and in all honesty, that's probably the best way for it to work. This fucking utopian globalist crap, which is this, let's just fucking call a fucking spade here. That's what this fucking is.
Yes.
Like, this is like globo homo shit.
Oh, totally. Okay. What we can do is we can have all humans care about all humans, and that's globalism, right? Like, I have to care equally about some random dude in Russia as I do to my neighbor, right? In theory, like that's how this would work. No. Check this out. If you just have people giving a shit about that which is proximal, then people will, all across the world, they will give a shit mostly about that which is proximal. And then aid and help can be localized, which are all things that I support, right? Like, instead of having everyone care about everyone across the entire world, here's an alternative structure. You have everyone within a neighborhood care about all the people within that neighborhood. And it actually results, I believe, in the same amount of charity being given out. It's just that amount of help, that amount of charity is actually more localized, more specific to the situation, and therefore can actually be more effective, right? Like maybe in the context of like my neighbor, they really need someone to, I don't know, look after their kid or something for a day. And it's like super useful because they have, their mother's in the hospital dying, so I have to look after the kid, and so they can go handle their mother thing. And that's something specific that I can do, and it's something local that I can do, and it's proximal, and the amount of help that I can give is actually massive there, right? Whereas, how is it that you help that person from like a global perspective where all humans are caring about other people? Do you just give that person like $20 to hire a babysitter, maybe? Like, I mean, when you go at it from like the global perspective and you erase the proximal, then it all just ends up becoming you throw money at the problem. I don't think that it actually works as well. I think that actually the superior system is to maintain the proximity, right? It's actually better for things to be proximal. I support localization of governments, for instance. So that would be my response to that.
One thing I'll say, it's like, from my perspective, this is a pretty bulletproof case that I'm about to make. We have a precedent for this. It's called 200,000 years of these people he's now talking about dying of famine, living in that area successfully, doing the exact thing that we've both been describing on a local level. It's only until recently where all these freaking famines and stripes and plagues seem to be the preeminent concern of all of these Western white people. So if anything, there's like two options. Either they're pathologically altruistic, or the things that they are doing are actually contributing to this problem instead of alleviating it.
Yeah, you know what? That's a good point. That would be the humans have been living in Africa for like a while. And they've survived there. So I mean, maybe you just don't worry about it so much. Like maybe in all of your niceness, maybe you're actually dicking things over and you don't even realize it, because again, and that's a good point, Breaker, but I'll also bring up a previous point that I made. You live in a complex world full of emergent properties that are just constantly emerging because it's so complex, and you cannot predict what your actions will actually have on the world. It's not predictable, right? Because we don't live in a platonic mathematical world of forms. We don't live there. We live in messy, gooey reality. And messy, gooey reality says that you can try to do something that's really nice, and you can end up actually causing a greater amount of harm inadvertently. So, I mean, honestly, if I were like one of these like people that believed in like metaphysical morality, I think that I would be I would perpetually just be indecisive, and like it would be tough to even move, because I wouldn't be able to fully realize the true consequences of my actions. I would be paralyzed. I honestly, I have no idea how it is that people that believe in metaphysical morality actually do anything in their everyday life. I have no idea, because I know that I would just be paralyzed. I don't know if this is actually the good or the bad thing to do.
Well, I'll tell you a secret about that. It's that you have to come to like a pragmatic realization. If you remember the Sargon and Peter Boghossian conversation, you have to come to this pragmatic intersection of this where it's just like, well, there exist things outside of and within my power to affect, and it's better to focus on one of those than the other. It's almost as though that ties into exactly what you've been arguing this entire time.
Yeah, that's just basic human nature. I say that we don't change human nature. I say that we, because all the people that have ever tried to change human nature it's caused a lot more death and suffering. I'm looking at Mao, or Stalin, or Hitler.
If anyone, Peter fucking Singer is actually contributing to this problem by screwing up the fucking natural economies and ways of tribal living that these people in these famine-stricken areas lived perfectly fine under for 200,000 years. So if anything, his pathological altruism is actually making it worse.
I would argue that I agree. Yes, okay.
It used to be that proximity made a significant moral difference because it used to be that a great distance prevented people from knowing about very bad things. It used to be that if there was some very bad thing happening on the other side of the world several hundred years ago, you could never know about that very bad thing, or you couldn't find out about it for months or years. But now proximity is irrelevant to your knowledge of very bad things because there's very efficient forms of communication. You can know about a famine going on in
I can know about it. It doesn't mean that I have to care about it. That's a fact.
another country while it's going on, with enough time to do something about it. Proximity also used to be relevant before these organizations existed. It used to be the case that you weren't able to sacrifice some luxury in order to save someone from a famine because, well, it was very hard to get things across the world, and there weren't organizations set up that had built very efficient systems for taking a few dollars from you and literally saving a person's life.
Breaker brought this up previously, but I would like to remind everyone to donate to the Clinton Foundation. They're a very efficient charity. They do a lot of good work. Just remember to donate to the Clinton Foundation. That's the one that Bill and Hillary Clinton set up. Really just outstanding organization. Remember to donate all of your money to them. I'm sure that it'll go to really good stuff, as with most charities.
On the other side of the planet. So proximity used to matter. It used to be a morally relevant difference between the pond example and the famine example. But it's not anymore, says Singer. So this difference of proximity does not prevent your intuition, your thoughts, your moral thoughts about an example like this from translating over to a very general claim like one. Here's the other potential difference. If you're trying to block this example from getting the result, ultimately, that you have to give up all the luxuries in your life, you might say, look, in this shallow pond example, we're led to assume that there's no one else that could save the child. There are no others who are capable of saving the child. But in the case of famine relief, anyone...
There are others that are capable of... I mean, with the child, maybe I'm the most proximal, so I should take care of the child. But if you're dealing with some village in Eastern Europe or Africa or South America or let's say Palestine or Ohio where that train derailment happened, and all that vinyl chloride leaked out, it's the people that are nearest to them that actually help out, right? So there are others that can actually help. It's not my job to take care of the Chinese people. It's the Chinese people to take care of the Chinese people. It's our Americans' jobs to take care of the people in Palestine, right? It's the people in Africa that maybe should be taking care of the people in Africa, right? Like if we're gonna do this thing where we help people out, yes, there are other people that should be taking care of that problem. It is the proximal people. It is the others that are proximal that should be taking care of that problem. It is not my responsibility. Okay, I don't have responsibility to someone across the globe. I have the responsibility to my community and my neighbors. Okay, like that. This is Yes, there are others. I'm completely disagreeing. There are others that are better suited to take care of that problem. The people that are more proximal.
One could give money to Oxfam, right? There's all these other people present. And the thought is, well, in the cases where there's all these other people present, it doesn't fall on you. You don't get the obligation to be the one who, saves someone's life when they're dying of famine. Here's what Singer says in response to that. He says, look, the presence of others who could help is sort of relevant because their presence typically leads to their actually helping, those other people actually helping prevent the very bad thing. So if there were other people who saw the child drowning in the shallow pond, well then, very likely one of those other people would save the child, and then you wouldn't have to save the child. And if then you showed up and you at the meeting and said, hey, there was this kid drowning in the pond, and whoever was going to go in and save the kid was going to get their clothes wet, and someone says, your clothes aren't wet. Are you an evil monster? And you say, no, there were other people there, and someone else saved the kid. And they'd say, oh, okay, wow, that must have been something. Let's get on to our frat party.
Yeah, it would have been a way better story if you jump in and save the kid. Then bitches are going to fuck you because you're the hero. So...
Yeah, he's really shooting himself in the fucking foot here.
Yeah. Like, actually, not out of any sort of moral do-goodery of my part, just that, I can tell them bitches that I saved a kid today. Like, I'm going to do that, and it's going to be for completely selfish reasons. Like, I want to be the hero. In fact, there's going to be like 3 dudes, and they're all just racing each other through the pond to get to the kid first. Who gets to be the hero?
Or whatever we were about to do. The point is, the presence of others is only relevant if those other people are going to do something. If they're not going to do anything, then it seems like, at least to Singer, the obligation is on you. If there's other people who are able to see that this child is drowning, but these other people care a great, great deal about getting their clothes wet or muddy,
I care about
and
getting
they're
pussy.
not going to step in to save the child, and you know this, and they say this to you, well, does the fact that they're there and they could save the child excuse you from your duty to save the child? No. If you show up at the meeting and you say, I was going to save this kid, but there were these other people there, and they say, who saved the child? And you say, no one saved the child. The child drowned. The child is dead now. Everyone would say, you're a monster. You're an evil person. You should have saved the child. And you say, yeah, but there were other people there. Doesn't matter. The other people didn't do anything about it. So that means you have to do something about it. The fact that there are other...
Okay, I'm gonna skip ahead to objections. Maybe something good will come out of this. So far, I'm so unimpressed by this entire line of reasoning.
Pretty much.
This is too much to ask for people to give up all these things. To that, Singer says a couple things. One thing he says is, look, that is a standard, objection to utilitarianism.
This entire thing is utilitarianism. We both called it Breaker. Fuck yeah, let's go.
Yeah, I already knew that from the construction, the initial construction of it.
Of course.
And Singer is himself a utilitarian, or
is Singer a utilitarian? Really? I could have never fucking guessed. That's amazing.
Couldn't have happened.
Wow.
No way.
Wow.
At least he's a consequentialist. I can't remember. Anyway, he's close to a utilitarian, and he could be for the purposes of this paper. So, well, it's a standard objection against utilitarianism that it's too demanding. But Singer just thinks that this is a very weak objection. Maybe morality is very demanding. The argument seems to work. The fact that you don't...
See, this is what utilitarianism does. It says, I have a moral object that I have constructed within my mind. I've decided that this is good, and I have also decided that all of human nature should change in order to achieve this moral construction that I made up in my head. That's basic utilitarianism. It's a preposterous notion. It doesn't make any goddamn sense. And I personally hate utilitarianism almost as much as I hate communism. This is like just going against utilitarianism in general will have to be its own separate video. But I hate it. I hate it so much. And I believe that as much as Breaker and I have very different views about the world, I believe that Breaker also hates it, but for maybe a different set of reasons.
Well, yeah, that's why me and Parallax have talked about that many times, and I call it the destroy all humans protocol. That's literally what utilitarianism is. If you ever see the trope because utilitarianism is very rigidly logical, like he sets up here with these like premises and conclusion. Now, what happens when you have finitely many axioms and you extrapolate those out to their ultimate logical conclusions, and then you try and say, okay, is this system self-validating? We know the answer to that.
Well, yeah, that system inherently must not be self-validating. Because if math couldn't do it, utilitarianism certainly isn't.
Yeah, and math had fucking hierarchies of infinities to fucking deal with.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that we've watched enough of this video. I think that I've been convinced that I don't agree with this line of reasoning that Peter Singer is putting out. But you know, hey, if you viewer, if you found something that you really liked about Peter Singer's argument, leave a comment, you know, down below, and tell us why we're wrong. Tell us that we're stupid poo-poo faces, and that actually utilitarianism is the most based of all of the moral philosophies, and that actually there is such a thing as objective morality. Why not? Leave that comment down below, and I'll respond to it. But
you could actually end up on the show as a special guest appearance if your comment is sufficiently big-brained. I don't want to. Well, if you leave the stupid poo-poo face comment, you're much less likely to end up on the show. Just so you know. But I mean, that might have to be a Rumble exclusive because that's going to go into Internet Bloodsport territory.
But I mean, yeah, absolutely. If anyone listening actually wants to like, if they have a disagreement with what we've brought up about any of this, you don't even have to be in support of Peter Singer's original position. If you're like a general utilitarianism, or you don't like my ideas about rejection of morality and preferring axiology. Leave a comment down below, and maybe you can hop on and explain. And Breaker can be the moderator. He actually tends to be pretty decent at that job.
Yay!
Unless you want to fight with Breaker, in which case I'll be the moderator. But I'm kind of a shit moderator because I'm biased as hell. But with that, hey, if you made it all the way to this point, thank you so much for listening. Remember to leave a like and do all the things. Do all the things. And with that, that's gonna wrap up the show. And any closing remarks, Breaker?
Every time you ring the bell, a new pronoun is created. Yay!
Oh wow, isn't that nice? Peace out, everyone.